back in January of last year. And so that's where we are today. We have the old comprehensive plan, dates back to 1981. We've changed a little bit since 1981. I looked at a couple of stats. Back in 1980, we're about 7,100 acres in size. Now we're about 8,600 acres. Had a population of 25,000 back in 1980, and we're up to 42,000. So we've added 2.5 square miles and about 20,000 folks. So it is a different community, and that's why I think it looks and feels a little bit different from what we've got now. So with that, I'm going to just kick it over to Randy, and he's going to tell you what we've been doing. It just 1 year is all we've worked on this.
I've only been here a year, so that's all you're going to get. Thanks for being together with us, and we look forward to talking about the comp plan, but more than anything, we look forward to wrapping it up. And so I'm going to...
Can we have an amen?
all approved? No. And I'm just going to give you a real quick overview because I mean, even our board is half new. And so we've been working on this for a year. A year ago, we started the Inspire Littleton campaign and the website. We used Mind Mixer to do that website, and we think that was a very successful campaign because we had nearly 1,000 people participate in 4 different planning forums that were associated with that, where we had the citizens come out and ask questions and hear about what we're doing with the comp plan. There were 4,949 visits to the sites, looking at over 41,000 pages of the site. 557 participants generating 320 ideas, 593 comments, which generated 370 pages of printout. So we got a lot of feedback, and the staff consolidated that and helped us narrow that into some of the goals that we're going to be talking about tonight, and you've already seen. But beyond that, we had planning board day-long sessions where we talked to a few of the experts that you've already talked to yourselves. Chuck Perry, Tom Wooten, and at the time, Denise Stevens had just come on, and so she talked a little bit about her vision for economic development. And so that was our day-long session last year that we had. And out of that came a rough draft of goals and strategies, and then the planning board had their own work sessions, 2 or 3 of them, to narrow it even further, so on and so forth. Then we had a joint session with the council that you remember, and we took the comments that we received from that, made some more changes, not a lot. What you see tonight is not a whole lot different than what you saw before, but some of the wording and some of the comments were integrated into that. And so that is really, in a nutshell, what we've done in the last year. Basically, what I want to talk about real quick is the structure of the comprehensive plan that you'll see compared to the structure of the comprehensive plan in the 80s. Basically, what we've done, the first part of the comp plan addresses citywide goals and policies. And that's really where this document that we're looking at tonight focuses, and it will update that section. The second half of the comp plan that we currently have are the neighborhood plans. The neighborhood plans are basically a more detailed look at the geographical neighborhoods that were identified in the 80s. We're not touching those other than editing out policies that no longer apply, policies that were already implemented, or ones that just aren't relevant. And so they will be reformatted to look the same as the current text that we're going to provide you, but they're not going to change at this point. They'll just be attached. So the focus is on the citywide goals, goals and policies. What you also notice in the 1981 plan is that you have the citywide general goals, and then you have land use, open space, transportation, annexation, housing, all those different sections or elements that are typical in a comprehensive plan. What we've done is try to update the format of a comprehensive plan into a different format, where we take the land use, the open space, the housing, annexation, the various elements, and put them into more integrated goals and policies that apply to the four different, what do we call them?
Goals?
Goals. Thank you.
Goals and policies.
So, for example, there might be a land use and an open space policy within any one of the four goals that we have. Because we believe that we don't live in a single-use environment anymore. We live in more of an integrated, mixed-use type of planning model where things are work together. And so land use is not static. It works with open space. It works with housing and things like that. And so the goals are more integrated and broad brush and hit all the elements in different places. And then lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about how we see the comprehensive plan being used. The comprehensive plan is often referred to as a 30,000-foot view of the city, of the big picture of the city, looking at when a city is young, there's a lot of empty land on the hinterland, and so you need a comprehensive plan to help you direct how you're going to grow and how your future land use might move into those vacant areas of the city that might be annexed or currently vacant. Littleton is an infill city. There's hardly any vacant land left. And so the way we view the comprehensive plan is not from a 30,000 square foot view, but more of a 10,000 foot view, if not a 20-foot view. Because now we're looking at buildings that have to be redeveloped. We're looking at smaller parcels that are going to get developed. And so it's more like the plan has to give some general vision to where the city is headed and where the planning documents are going to take it, but leave it at that. Leave it more of a big picture view of things and let the downtown plan, the Littleton downtown plan, the Littleton corridor plan, the Santa Fe corridor plan, all the various neighborhood plans, let those provide the more detailed discussion of how the character of the place is going to look, or the detail of the look of the place. So we want the comprehensive plan to be just a broad vision for the city, and that's why we think we can wrap this up with what we have and then move on to the more detailed plans that will provide the direction for the different areas. I'm done. So I think you've had the plan already, the current plan. And there's no format as to how we want to talk about it. And so I guess, like last time, we just went around and everybody expressed their thoughts about the plan as it is, and we can do that again, or...
Does anybody have any comments? Jim?
Well, I certainly think that from the first draft that we saw a few months ago to this draft tonight is greatly improved. I like this format. I like some of the wording changes that were made. I do have a few questions I need just some clarification on. Do you want me to go through those, or?
Yeah, I think so. And any of the board members are available. I mean, this is an open forum. It's not just me.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the plan under B on the goals and policies under number 1, which is the first page, and you get down to the very bottom, policies B, increase the number of connections. I think that's an admirable goal. I just think it's impractical and very difficult to do. I don't want to see something like that removed. I think it needs to probably be there. But when you come to practicality, I'm not for sure that that's, you might be able to improve them, but to increase them is difficult to try to do just because of the physical barriers that exist. So I wouldn't want to see any change in that, but just a concern that you have. When you get to the next page and you talk about number D is protecting and enhancing the most important natural areas and wildlife habitat, and to some extent that is contrary to A, B, and C. A, B, and C is talking about doing things very proactively, and then all of a sudden you're going to say, doing all of this, and yet we're going to protect the wildlife. Those two are somewhat, in my mind, in conflict. So I don't know, I don't have any suggested change, but when I was reading through this, it did seem to me that that was a conflict, A, B, and C, and versus D.
Maybe we could put in a comment about certain areas to be protected versus D, basically the whole thing.
D, it does mention, I mean, to me, I interpret it as D being the whole thing.
Right.
And maybe narrowing it down or putting a few more limiting words in there might help me understand that.
And Jim, if I could just tag onto that, the corridor in Littleton, the river corridor, can really be divided into two pieces. One is South Platte Park, which is protected open space, and it has a management plan on it. And then the other is the river corridor outside of South Platte Park, which you do have some natural open space areas that abut it, but you've got also private property and, of course, Colorado Water Board easement. So there would be more opportunity for connectivity outside of South Platte Park, so you might just divide it in that regard.
Moving on to goal number 2 on dynamic Littleton, the goal statement itself, the end of it says changing needs and desires of its residents and businesses. And I keep interpreting when you say and, that you've got to do both. And you can't have, in my mind, changing needs and desires of residents satisfying both. And I keep thinking back to Nevada Place 2, in that the changing needs is the desire to get more residents in to buy material at the Main Street shops that provides tax money so we can provide services, versus the desires of residents, which was not entirely 100% in favor of that project. But if you're saying you're going to do both with residents and businesses, I think that's difficult in my mind to do. That if the word and were changed to or, to me would make a lot more sense, because then you can do one or the other. When an and is in there, then you've got to, as a decision maker, determine whether you're going to deal with the needs or whether you're going to deal with the desires. And I see conflict in those two.
Jim, could I comment on that? Oops, sorry. It seems to me if you just stop the sentence with foster a vibrant and evolving community, you don't run into that problem at all. And the idea really is the evolving part, right? So
Right.
if you just leave off that last part, then the policies, kick in with what they say, but you don't have that conflict.
That's true. Something you guys can consider. Mm-hmm. When you get into policies, you start out with encourage, and I like that. You encourage more, you encourage opportunities, you encourage retail, you encourage certain, you encourage take. You encourage housing, you encourage I mean, you've got to change the beginning word for number 5. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I thought about just taking it out and you say encourage advantage. That doesn't make any sense to me either. But you got to look at that word.
You guys can figure that out. Okay.
Yeah. When you get to number 9 on the next page, and you're talking about C, downtown small town character. That's fine, I just think someplace we need a definition of what the small town character is. Same token, the previous page, we had activity areas, that needs to have a definition someplace too, is what an activity area is. That was on number 4.
I believe we're going to have a definitions page, sheet.
Okay.
And a map, I think, of the activity areas as well.
Right.
That was an exercise the board went through to identify those special areas of the community.
A question, because Jim brings up in talking about this, which is, Randy, you spoke about the corridor plans. The only specific one that's mentioned is the South Santa Fe corridor. You didn't mention the downtown plan. So what's in or not in as far as inclusive? I see the neighborhoods and all. I think there's 8 or 9 of those that's there. But I didn't see the downtown plan.
Downtown's under residential neighborhood plans. It probably should just be neighborhood plans.
What about,
So it's number 3 under neighborhood plans.
Okay.
what about Littleton corridor study?
Boulevard study.
Was not adopted by city council.
It was, what's the word that they used?
Yeah, it's a different word.
So we
And a
can't-
lot of discussion.
Wait a minute. They use ratify, doesn't that, to me means it's rare
My
to go.
understanding from the folks that were there and from the minutes of that meeting, that was not their intent. So, but we can certainly revisit that.
I think we talked about Littleton Boulevard being a future corridor study as a part of the comprehensive plan, but what we listed in here is the actual one that's active, which is South Santa Fe. So I think we did talk about Broadway and Littleton Boulevard as being
Broadway, and
those.
there's Littleton Boulevard, and you could even include South Park as another, that,
Mineral.
whether you want to call it Mineral or South Park, or.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, some of the corridor plans haven't been done yet.
Well, but if you're going to put the frame here, because you haven't also attached your edited versions of the neighborhood plans, you might want to put placeholders for anticipation to say, here's what we do need to complete these, and they'll be coming back in some staggered or collective.
I believe that was the intent, right, of the board?
Yes.
Another thing that was kind of brought up, I think, by Councilman Stallman at the last meeting, when you're talking about these policies, is, no, it wasn't him. It was but providing a parking structure, a parking facility. That you didn't address in here, and does it need to be addressed in this section? I'll get to Bruce's comment in another spot. But the parking facility might need to be addressed someplace in this dynamic downtown Littleton.
Is that it?
Going on to goal number 3 under connected Littleton, number 4, I think that's a great strategy. Again, I think it's somewhat impractical, but I think it's worth leaving in there. Just an observation that it's going to be difficult to do.
Are you going to point out anything that's easy to do?
Well, all of it's easy to do, except those things I'm mentioning. How's that?
That's fine.
Then we go to transformative perspectives in number 2. I would suggest leaving the word every out and adding an S to decisions. So it's apply the goal of economic, environmental, and social sustainability in community decisions. If you say every, you're going to have to do that every time for every objective that you're dealing with, and I don't think that's possible. So if you strike out every and just put S on decisions, I think you're achieving the same thing, but you're not demanding that it has to be done.
So since I was going to talk about that one, I'll mention here, I'm not sure that we want to use the word community, because in my head, we can't control every community decision. It's a lot of those are not in the prerogative of the city. So I'm thinking city decision, if that's in the broad sense, right? I mean, we can encourage neighborhoods in the kinds of things they can do to do certain things, but we can't make them unless it's related to various ordinances.
Except that,
Or if it's decisions that affect the community, that's a different thing.
but a comp plan is looked at by developers as guides also, right?
But again, I'm saying the communities themselves may have decisions that they make that we don't have any control over.
Right.
So it's the city's decisions that affect communities that the developers care about, right?
Certainly influences.
Anyway, it's a subtlety, so.
Bruce, excuse me, Jim, do you have?
I'm almost there.
Okay.
Transformative actions, in the first line, you talked about the vision. I think that you need to put city in front of vision, just wordsmith there. Under highlight the river, number 1, the focus on public and private investments. How far from the river are we talking about? What's the length of distance? Because Randy, as you said, there's not many opportunities. We don't have a lot of space that we can deal with that. But are we talking about far enough to get to the railroad depression? Is that where we're talking about investments along the river? I just raise that question because I don't know what that means. And as a stranger, as a developer coming in, would a developer know what that means?
And that might be clarified in our graphic where we show the river corridor.
Okay. And
We'll make a note of that.
Or do we just say Santa Fe to the river?
Yeah, I mean, that's what our graphic shows,
Yes.
pretty much, yeah.
And then, I'm sorry, I've got to go back to one other. If you go back to goal number 2 on a dynamic Littleton, when you get to number 7, it talks about, at the very end of that, are appropriately buffered from adjacent uses. These are underperforming properties being redeveloped. A sustainable mix of uses that are appropriately buffered from adjacent uses. So our current underperforming shopping centers, but single-family housing now. If the center is redeveloped, how will appropriately buffered adjacent uses be interpreted? Is that going to be left up to the planning commission to decide what that is, and then they pass it on to council, and then we either accept your decision or we reject it and adopt our own?
Well, my comment is that throughout this whole document, there's a huge amount of flexibility in how you interpret every statement. There's just, I think it's a general question is, should this be specific enough to remove all judgment per se, or do you leave it kind of fluffy and let whoever's the current board and council interpret it the way they want? I think that's one question that maybe, like, high-level question we should answer for this document.
Well, we also have already codes and zoning and easement and rules and laws about that type of thing. So depending on what the type of redevelopment would be, we do have setbacks and requirements for that would, I think, would be the overlay to this broader base.
I would leave it to the neighborhood plans, the Littleton downtown plan, the corridor plans, to begin to provide the specificity of that kind of detail. Now, I agree that we even struggled ourselves about how to word it. What is appropriate buffering?
If you say what you just said, if you hear what you just said, then a reference to the neighborhood plans is all you need because they would give that insight.
I think what we need to do.
I agree with Jim.
Right.
When things come to council, I don't want them to be so broad that anything can go. And I think that's part of what citizens are concerned with too, and developers.
Right.
That suddenly it'll mean this, but I thought it meant that because I didn't see the other possibility.
As part of our how to use this document, we need to explain where we're going to reference or point towards neighborhood plans, the sub-area, or the corridor plans.
Because we certainly have underperforming shopping centers right now that we would like to see redeveloped. I just don't want to have an interpretation in there that because they're being redeveloped, then you got to put in a transition between what's existing there now and the existing homes that are they border it right now next to each other. Is this going to be interpreted that you got to then put in apartments between the single family and the commercial? They're not there now, and I don't want to see that type of thing be, I guess, mandated.
I think for me, the word new commercial development is a sticking point. It's redeveloping a commercial development. New thing versus just changing one that's already there.
That does raise the question, if you're redeveloping it, but you're keeping the existing structure of the building.
Well, maybe you're tearing the whole thing down and starting all over.
I think as a board, we're going to need to talk about this one, because it was a change in the last meeting, so.
I think we also talked about underperforming doesn't necessarily just pertain to commercial properties, could be underperforming residential. So that it covers a number of different types of properties.
Yes.
Bruce?
I've got a question and then a couple comments. Will there be a neighborhood plan that will cover 100% of the land mass in the city? So that this the general items in the comp plan overall will then have specificity in a neighborhood plan, and there will not be a space in Littleton that is not subject to a neighborhood plan? Is that the intent?
The intent is that the entire city will have a sub-plan or a more detailed plan focused on the geographical area. We haven't decided, we've talked about whether or not the boundaries of the current neighborhood plans are still appropriate, or whether or not they should be consolidated into fewer neighborhoods. But for now, the neighborhood plans that are in the comprehensive plan are going to stay the way they are. And we have one neighborhood that doesn't have a plan out in...
Far southwest.
Yeah, southwest, that neighborhood. Yeah.
Well, no, actually,
Polo Grounds.
Debbie's neighborhood and west are there, so yeah, Polo Grounds, exactly. Polo
So
Reserve.
they're new since the comprehensive plan was first done.
Wouldn't it be, I'm not sure they'd all fit in a neighborhood plan, but between a neighborhood plan and a corridor plan, I would look for, I would like, if you wanted a desire, as opposed to a need, would be to have at least the city as we know it covered. I mean, and it doesn't have to be a neighborhood plan, because, I envision the corridors with some commercial isn't necessarily, it's not all neighborhood.
In the interest of moving, I'm sorry.
Well, we just go with the two comments. The comp plan is very important because it is one of the reasons why rezoning can occur. Rezoning can occur because of change of circumstances, error in the zoning map, or to comply with the comp plan. So I think it's incumbent, and we've seen that as 10 years ago when there was some activity, and then more recently, specificity to the comp plan, specific areas became justifications to authorize or justify or request a change in zoning. So that's why I brought it up, and my comment on that question would be, maybe there's an all others, maybe there's another way to make sure that there isn't an area of town that inadvertently is left without adequate specificity. Okay, just
That's a good point.
and then the other is, and maybe it fits to goal number 4, distinctive Littleton, but I don't think you mentioned preserving existing small end neighborhoods and protecting those things that are distinctive about them or a sense of place in them, and that should be a consideration to preserve and protect that sense of place. And that's not in the big neighborhoods you're talking about. There could be something very small. Arapahoe Hills maybe comes to mind. There's a clearly identified neighborhood with something unique about it, and that uniqueness should be considered in things that are effective. And I don't see that a comment to that extent.
You're not referring to any particular goal that we have, just making a general comment?
Well, I'd say, in goal number 4, distinctive Littleton, that might be a place to make a comment about,
Right.
about that. But I didn't see it addressed somewhere else.
So a policy that would protect those unique areas, those special areas.
It kind of goes under 2, where it's about the historic, because that's what Arapahoe Hills is a designated area.
I'm finding the neighborhood that I've just moved into has very distinctive consideration. They have a neighborhood group, they identify themselves with the geographic area around it, and should the open space next to them be developed, whatever, you'd find that that's a very distinctive neighborhood that should have some considerations to that distinctiveness. And I'm sure there's others around the Stern Park area or wherever it might be.
Right.
Would we need to actually define those characters
Yeah.
in the comp plan, or?
No, I think
That's a challenge.
you just have to say consideration be given to a neighborhood sense of place, and to preserve and protect those things that contribute to that sense of place. That's a very important part of living in Littleton.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about getting into those micro neighborhoods and being able to identify them and then, provide some unique guidance on each. But I think a policy overall about the importance of what should be considered when we're defining distinctive, I think hopefully can address that.
Somehow it could be addressed, but we just addressed downtown uniqueness. There's other uniquenesses in Littleton.
One of the traps we don't want to fall into is getting stuck in the neighborhood plans themselves and have it prohibit our ability to get a comp plan, certainly at a 30,000-foot level.
That's why I asked that question, is if the specificity is at another level than just in this general document.
I think that the task becomes creating the map on how we want uniformity in each of the various neighborhood plans so that they directly align with this. The fact there's even a comp plan is going to be news to most people in this city. And then once we engage in a neighborhood process area by area, I think that's when we can get into that granular detail and let the people who live there define what they want, so long as it's in line with the general overall vision.
I'm fine with that.
And my concern, though, is if someone comes back at a later date and says, well, for my neighborhood here, this is a characteristic that defines it for me, and that for somehow that characteristic prevents any development change, anything. So I'm just wondering if it's not specified, at least at the neighborhood plans, could that somehow come back at a later date to prohibit basically any change anywhere?
I do have a concern. I'm getting a little confused. I think most of the neighborhoods, when I think of a neighborhood, primarily it's the homes, it's maybe a school within there. We don't have a lot of, except for along our corridors, commercial. So in terms of the neighborhoods, I don't know, drilling too deep into any of the neighborhoods is going to behoove us. They are pretty much established. There are a little HOA set up here and a little special thing here. We're not going to go in and turn a park into a industrial zone. If they're back to open space, that's going to stay open space. I think you have to look at the overall at the city, at Google Map or Google Earth or something, and see if there are pockets where there may be places that we need to consider, and then those can be dealt with more individually. But I think to speak in general terms about preserving the community culture of a neighborhood and just kind of those broad terms, I don't see people coming in and changing the neighborhoods substantially. I really think the time, from my perspective, the time should be spent on the corridor plans, and there's really 4 corridors: Broadway, Mineral/County Line area, Santa Fe, Littleton Boulevard. you know, and you've got neighborhoods that abut those, but those become part of that bigger, because that's where the changes are going to happen.
I think at one time we had a neighborhood down around Wolver's that was very concerned about commercial development next to them and what it was doing to their sense of place. This needs to mention that awareness.
Well, but see, that, a Santa Fe plan would have encompassed that too.
And that was my point. If there is a plan in detail that will cover 100% of the city, you know, but.
Well, because I'm just,
it needs to be there.
yeah, because while I agree that the neighborhoods are, you know, that they'll have their special, that they have their own thing, the change is going to happen in the corridors. And that's, I think that's where, I mean, developers aren't looking at the Stern Park neighborhood as to what they can go in there and do on the lake or in the Rose Garden. Now we've got the building up there on the corner, so it's probably a bad example, but but that's a Littleton Boulevard plan.
Well, an example was we had I believe there's a martial arts studio that was right in the middle of the residential area. Nobody saw that coming, and now it was originally something totally different. Some consideration needed to be given to that neighborhood and that area, and I'm not sure where in this it would address the concern of that neighborhood for that sense of place and that sudden commercial establishment within it.
Well, that was a church.
Yeah, but it became a commercial establishment.
Council authorized it.
Based on the comp plan? This comp
Well, I don't know.
So that's,
Well, it was the comp plan we were operating.
I just think we
I'd
need
have
to
to-
make sure we are available to address those types of comments in lieu of what I think is what makes Littleton and Jewel, it's the neighborhoods. And if it's not mentioned in the comp plan, I don't know where else it would be. I mean, I think that should be, comp plan reflects the values of the community, and it needs to be in there.
Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not disagreeing with you. I do think that there has to be preservation in there for the neighborhoods. We don't want to forget those. I just don't know that the neighborhoods need to have the drill down we're talking about. I think, I mean, it's up to you guys how deep you want to go, but you could spend another year in the neighborhoods, and we've got 4 corridors that is where the activity and the interest lies right now.
The other effort will come into the activity areas. So when you think about, how do we cover 100%? It's a combination of the neighborhood plans, the corridor plans, and then these special activity areas that kind of overlay and may cross corridor or neighborhood. So that's just another way that we get to that 100%, even if we don't focus on one particular corner.
Our goal this time is if you just take the table of contents and get this first part, citywide plan, all of the things that we mentioned about neighborhood plans and quarter plans are intended for future, but we want to get A, done and on the books before we get to B and C. And we don't feel comfortable moving forward at all with B and C until there's agreement on it.
Jerry?
Yeah, Randy, I like the approach you're taking with the neighborhoods where you're going to just tweak them. And Andrew, you're absolutely right. That's for another day. But I think you guys have gotten to a point where you can actually print this thing. I mean, add in the corridors, and I think you're there. And then it's going to be instead of waiting 20 years before you do something about it, it's going to be it's a living document. It's going to be changed from time to time. I think if we're waiting to get a perfect document right now, we're going to wait another 20 years. I think we are so close to getting this sucker out there. Let's just do it. Other than changing a few words that a couple of you mentioned.
Peggy?
So you want to hear my few words?
Not particularly.
I do.
Go ahead.
We're not going to do a bunch of editing, though.
No, but I have several, just to go down like Jim did.
Okay.
Well, actually, before we leave that, before we change the topic here, just on the neighborhood plans I think one of the things that will be crucial is that we don't have overlap, so that the neighborhood plan does not overlap a corridor plan, so that way you kind of have 2 jurisdictions for the same piece of parcel of land.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really important to keep totally separate, so there's no union or no overlap between those.
Other than along Broadway or Littleton Boulevard where you do have some residentials, because that's a corridor.
I don't know if
where
you can
where
avoid
have
that.
houses.
They have to overlap.
Yeah,
In
There
some
there are
cases.
specific spots. Santa Fe, some, not much.
So, well, I guess my concern is that, like, for example, if you're reviewing a rezoning application for that place that has more or less two jurisdictions, kind of, how do you weigh the two different plans? So which one does it more?
Which one supersedes?
Yeah. So that'd be my concern is when you're reviewing a rezoning case.
I don't think the plans will conflict with each other as much as they will overlay each other. You'll know when this overlay piece comes in, and I don't think there's going to be a conflict, at least.
Well, for example, the neighborhood's adjacent to Broadway. But the boundary probably will go one house deep, the frontage units. That should be the break line for that adjacent neighborhood too. So there really shouldn't be any overlap. Currently, though, we're not revising the neighborhood plans, so that all has to get fleshed out when they do get done.
They comes.
Peggy?
So, well, first I want to thank you. This is just incredible work, so I want to tell you that. But when I read it, it's a little bit like Jim. I'm wanting to know if something comes to me, am I really going to understand the intent of certain pieces? So if you'll bear with me, I'll give some comments and questions. So in 1A, let's see, 1, 2, 3, the fourth bullet, value livability, diversity, and progress. I suggest you separate those into separate bullets. I don't know that you value progress. I mean, that in itself is good. I welcome progress, so welcome progress that embraces Littleton's values. So that's just a suggestion, but I'd value liberty, embrace diversity, separate bullets, and separate bullet, welcome progress that embraces what Littleton values. I'm scrolling down. On the second page of what we have, it's policies 1C. This is talking about kid-friendly activities, but what about for activities?
What goal are you on?
The first one?
Goal 1? Okay.
Yeah, with goal B, I'm sorry, goal B, policy 1, item C.
Goal.
I think
It's goal 1.
Okay.
Goal 1, policy.
1C.
1C. Gotcha.
Policies C. So it's nice to have kid-friendly activities, but what about activities for people of all ages and abilities? Because we have now, for example, along the South Platte, where we're trying to accommodate fishing for people that are challenged in being able to fish. So I think the activity should be for people of all ages and abilities.
So Peggy, just on that one, because actually we debated this a lot, and I think you see this throughout the document, we're trying to say for example, but not exclusively or only for these things. So that's a way that we're trying to address that, because we had that comment in some other areas as well.
That particular piece, it just seems to me easier to embrace all ages.
Okay.
I mean, to emphasize so that our aging folks, of which I guess I'm one of the older aging ones, so it's not that many more words, but it clearly emphasizes the diversity.
Just say age-friendly activities instead of kid-friendly.
Yeah, or just,
Appropriate.
Yeah.
however,
Age-friendly.
Conversely, to defend that, one of the awards that Littleton won 2 years ago was Best Place to Raise a Family. And we had extensive debate on focus on your strengths. And if that is truly recognized by others as a strength of what we have, then we should do our darndest to market it. So to put things like kids and family words in there are specific choices that I think are really keeping. I am totally open to finding a way to grammatically expand that, but I don't want to lose the kid and the family pieces.
well, no, that's okay then. So from kids to people the side of their coffin, but empty.
Okay.
But whatever.
Peggy, let's just give them your thought, and then you guys have heard the thoughts, and then you get to put them in or not.
So then, item 2 in that same section, 2 2 to me seems to really be an extension of, an addition to items 3 through 6. So I thought maybe 2 should follow 3 through 6, and it would be safeguard and enrich the city's other outdoor resources, because so many are itemized, and then that's a more comprehensive statement.
Okay.
Let's see. The item 6 in that section, locate parks and improve access to them so that every residence is within a comfortable and inviting 10-minute walk of a park. And I say this because I saw someone walking their little bitty kid, to Stern Park on Spotswood, and the little bitty kid walks an awful lot slower than the adult. So it seems to me maybe a distance rather than a time would be better in there. Maybe a half mile, I'm not sure, but
Just say comfortable and inviting and be done with it.
well, but something. It's just the walking time just.
Or where we teach kids to walk fast.
Come on. You got 10 minutes.
It's part of the healthy living.
Yeah, but if a kid walks slow on purpose and the park's closer to his house.
So, goal 2, policy number 2, opportunities for dynamic employers to locate within the city, etc. I'm not sure what the devil a dynamic employer is, and I'm not going to mention several that come to mind that might be a little risque here. So I'm just not sure what exactly that means.
Dynamic, in business today, if you go to some of these offices, it isn't just like going to a cubicle now and just hanging out and minding your own business in front of your computer. The offices today are very different, and I presume that's what you guys were sort of looking at. It's innovative type businesses.
Well, innovative is clearer in my head than dynamic. And I don't, again, I just suggest that if there's some way maybe.
I guess I just don't get hung up on that kind of stuff.
Clarified or not.
I'm just glad to see you're to this point.
On just above goal 3, in item 9. So it's just above goal 3, so I figured that was easier to find.
There is no stinking 9.
Goal number 2, policy number 9.
Oh, I thought she said 3. I know, she said 3.
Okay.
Okay, so increasing, item C, achieving building heights that allow for the desired mass and scale while respecting the pedestrian environment of Main Street and downtown's small character. I'm wondering what about ensuring the diversity of housing, which also includes single-family residences. That right now is in the downtown piece, so it seems to me maybe.
Number 6.
Pardon?
Diversity of housing is number 6.
I know, but in terms of that particular statement, it doesn't sound like that's being, it's in there. So maybe 6 needs to be tweaked with this. I'm not sure. I just pointed that out. Goal number 3, policy 1. We want to reduce conflicts between motor vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. What about skateboards, which was mentioned at the Western Regional, the urban conferences?
Add the word yada yada.
Yeah.
So, what
You've
about
got
skateboards
scooters,
and-
rollerblades.
Yeah,
I mean,
right, so something though that would
just
say
kind of a et
efficient-
cetera.
Yeah.
Okay.
And catch-all stuff.
I think
Okay.
pedestrians generically mean people on boards or rollerblades.
Whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a couple
Wheels.
of times almost been run over by skateboards coming down.
Well,
the
they
hill.
complain about you walking too fast around them, too.
That's why you should carry a little bit of gravel with you.
Marbles.
Yeah, really.
Well, when they're coming from behind and you don't hear them, boy. Item 3 in that section, provide inviting connections between commercial developments and adjacent neighborhoods. And I'm trying to wrap my head around that. Inviting to whom and in which direction? Are we inviting people from the neighborhood to the commercial, or from the commercial to the neighborhood? Maybe
Yes.
what we're looking at is just attractive connections. But whatever, so maybe, or as you say, between, maybe it's to and from, I don't know. Item 4, the pedestrian bicycle connections, maybe again, something that's going to catch more than just the pedestrian and bicycle. Let's see. Provide public gathering places, item 5, and support public use of those spaces. I'm trying to conceptualize what support means, support in what way. So maybe an example, I'm not sure, if you have something to clarify. Item 6, generate a creative and comprehensive wayfinding system. I think maybe at least one comprehensive wayfinding system, because there might be, I mean, we don't want to shut down some others that might be very simple to implement. Be glad I'm jumping ahead here. I already raised one of these. Item C, transformative perspectives. Item number C, raise the bar. The bullet, increase the level of expectation for community development and economic development activities. And again, that level of expectation seems a little, seems vague to me. I'm not sure what kind of expectation we're talking. If we're talking, I mean, I just don't know. I can think of several different things. So maybe example or maybe something else. Again, I'm saying these things with a real emphasis that you guys have done a phenomenal job.
What was that last comment? Which one was that related to?
That's number 3, raise the bar.
Okay.
C3.
Transformative actions, item 1, highlight the river. 1, 2, 3. Fourth bullet, using tools such as zoning and capital improvements set the stage for new development or redevelopment of the identified locations. Well, once the stage has been set, there's nothing more to do. So I think, maybe think of a way that gets through that. I mean, for example, we've set the stage already with some stuff with Breckenridge Brewery, with the Draft House, you know, some other things. So I'm not quite sure what to say there, but something that goes beyond once it's set, right? Item 2 in that area, focus on activity areas, second bullet, using tools such as zoning and capital improvements set the stage for new development, and I would add, and redevelopment in designated activities area. Item 3, expand the city. I'm not quite sure that expanding is the right way. We don't have too much area to expand outward, although we potentially could if we leapfrog in certain ways and annex some things we could. But it seems to me maybe the goal more is ensuring a vibrant population capable of sustaining the city as a desirable place to live, work, and play. So I think what we're trying to do is ensure that when opportunities arise, we get some young people who can have 20 kids, and I'm teasing, or in other ways increase the population. So that's just a suggestion for some way to deal with that. And then 1, 2, 3, the fourth and fifth goals, referring to annexation. I do ask the question, is annexation necessarily in Littleton's interest in and of itself? So don't the advantages and disadvantages of each possible annexation need to be carefully weighed? So it's not yes or no, but this encouragement to weigh these carefully because we don't want to lose what we value. So it's probably a good bit. I think that's all.
Bruce?
Yeah, again, I would certainly agree with the comments or the folks who've provide kudos. It's well done and a strong document. A couple comments and then just a question, I guess, at the end. And I'll pretty much agree with Jerry. I think you're to the point where this thing should move forward, and I think we'll get on down the road.
Somebody taking notes on that?
Yep, we got it. We got it recorded.
You can write that one down.
Just your comment. I wrote it down. All right, good.
Starting from the bottom, to Peggy's sort of last point about expand the city, maybe a different way to say it is to reinvest the city. I don't have a problem. I like the infill and the opportunity, the first three bullets. I don't have a problem with the last bullet in terms of the approaching owners that where there might be an opportunity to do annexation. I can think of a couple that could exist, but I think the two bullets above that, I guess it's the fourth and fifth, I don't know, those to me I think are expendable. I think you capture the whole concept of annexation in the last bullet within the context of the community's likely enthusiasm for such a topic. I think there's stuff we can do and cherry pick. I'm not sure we're looking to annex Highlands Ranch.
Oh, come on, Bruce.
Well, I just,
Let's go get Centennial.
Call me a crumb dungeon. Yeah, exactly. On goal number 3, Connected Littleton, policy number 7, I guess it's page 6. Only comment, I think this one did get made last time, but I think that the issue of integrate cutting-edge information and communication technology, I'd encourage the elimination of the words cutting edge. I think utilizing technology and integrating it is absolutely appropriate, but cutting edge is sort of a different animal altogether. And I'm not sure that's really what we're intending. Maybe it is, but I guess I would tend to think maybe we shouldn't say cutting edge, because we can certainly provide a lot of benefits without being...
Well, today's cutting edge is tomorrow's old time.
Yeah, exactly. Last, this is sort of a question on goal number 2.
No comments on my converter box.
For what?
On my converter box.
No,
did you get a hopper or something?
Get to your question.
On goal number 2, policies 5 and 6. I guess I'm going to ask for your guys' input here, because I've sort of struggled with this. This, to me, reads, and I didn't go back to look it up, but it reads a lot like what was in the downtown area plan, which I actually didn't have a whole lot of problems with. I kind of thought conceptually leaving it broad for interpretation purposes makes some sense. But we've also, as you guys are certainly aware, there's been a lot of comments and questions come in about, or suggestions about doing a transit-oriented plan, which you're sort of more or less, I don't know, edging up to in terms of taking advantage of 2 light rail stations and opportunities they provide for enhanced connectedness, so forth and so on. So maybe help me understand what you guys are thinking of with respect to those 2 policies as regards some of the comments we've heard about the need for transit-oriented development plans that are different from, say, the downtown neighborhood plan that maybe, blend into a Littleton corridor plan. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts and deliberations on those 2 particular policies.
Well, the Urban Land Institute, didn't they do a transit-oriented development plan for Mineral Station? It was accepted or ratified by the city, but they did a plan. There's one example of something we have in hand. Hopefully it's not in the trash can, but we have it on file. So, one example.
Are you thinking that those are sufficient for what you're trying to address here, or that different plans need to be considered?
Different plans, or other, this is not different, other,
Additional.
more, additional.
Okay. Okay, and what would those, help me, what would those look like? I mean, what do you envision those plans? I'm really trying to understand the framing of what that type of a plan would be, because the downtown area plan, right, wrong, or indifferent, at least seemed to be pretty comprehensive.
Well, at Santa Fe, or the Santa Fe and Mineral, it talked about, the redevelopment of the parking lots. Jerry was involved with it as well. We were on Planning Commission. It just talked about the, interface with Aspen Grove, in relationship with, with the corridors. It was fairly heavy duty and quite dense. It was a bit, took your breath away a little bit as to what was suggested.
Does this include NSER?
I think it went across the street, yes.
Yeah. But it obviously doesn't go east of the railroad tracks.
Go east?
No.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I mean, that's all residential. You're not talking about.
Oh, no.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
I don't think it delved too much into Enzer, but it was mostly right there at the corner. I think it talked about a connector from the light rail redevelopment to the Enzer property.
Okay. What about Main Street? Our light rail station.
Being so landlocked, what's the study going to be that's not already covered maybe in the downtown guidelines?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess what some of the comments have been is going east of the railroad tracks.
Good luck. Too far, good luck. Existing zoning will prohibit you from doing that unless you dive into tar and feather land.
Well, and then the one comment in there is about connectedness. And this is a slightly different twist on it, but the thought that crossed my mind is that with the Breckenridge Brewery going in, my understanding is there is no good way to walk from the light rail station to the brewery. So if you increase connectedness, somehow to get people, basically maybe the Denver millennials or whoever that doesn't have a car, they come from Denver to Littleton to try to get to the brewery, how do they get there?
Thinking like a circulator or something?
Well, or just a sidewalk even. Just something
They
some
can,
way. 'Cause I don't
there's
know.
the Mary Carter.
Is that,
Bikeway.
well, okay, so, but in that case, we'd probably hopefully have to put up signs or something so people know kind of how to get there.
That's where the wayfinding comes
The wayfinding comes in, but just the whole connectedness and getting from point A to point B, and if there was a more direct way to get there, I don't know if that would be helpful or not. But that's
Zip
just-
line? Zip line?
That'd be cool.
I like it.
Both ways?
From the top of Jackass Hill.
There you go.
I'm ready for it.
Pretty
Bruce,
good run.
Bruce, are you done?
Yeah, I mean, unless anybody else has any additional
I'll respond to that. In light of comprehensive plan being a vision, a broad brush, I see this policy as well as others as providing the guidance, which is what a comp plan does, for future opportunities, because this is supposedly a long-range plan, 20 years potentially. It'll probably be updated before that 20-year period, but again, we have no idea what 15 years ahead looks like. We have no idea that there might be an opportunity to do a study around the light rail because of market forces or population growth or transportation patterns that say, okay, now we need to look at this, and this particular policy says, let's take that opportunity to do it. It doesn't say how we're going to do it, or the detail, or what it's going to be, but it says we value our light rail stations as areas, nodes, to increase retail, housing, and connectivity. And it may be a sidewalk along Santa Fe. I saw a lady 3 weeks ago in her wheelchair going down the edge of Santa Fe. And I felt, we need a sidewalk for her. And so I see a lot of these policies, the connected one, this doesn't say how you're going to connect it or which way you're going to go to connect it, or whether it's in the retail or out of the retail. It just says we need connection. Figure it out later in the neighborhood plan or the corridor plan how that might occur.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And there are challenges that get put in here that we don't have control, like when you talk about along the Santa Fe corridor, which is controlled a lot by CDOT, the signage as well. They have certain restrictions that occur along that space. So when we talk about connectivity, if we don't talk about, at some point in time, we have to deal with partnerships and some change, because we don't control everything. I mean, the railroad has the railroad, and it exists.
And the airport has airplanes.
Yeah, but we don't currently have an airport with airplanes.
Flying V?
No, we don't.
Oh, we need to have
The Flying V used to
And
have.
Flying V used to, yes.
connection, airport.
No, we missed that one.
Why stop there? I think a spaceport would be a better.
That's right.
Yes.
Move on up.
Oh, boy.
Go ahead.
But I was going to say, I think it covers it, and I'll just emphasize my earlier points is, put all the corridors there, and if you're going to fill them in, or, put some guidance or, current draft or something. But between those and the neighborhood plans, see that everything is covered. And I like that you're not dealing with it, because it's going to be one of those that's going to have the natural tension, is where a corridor plan hits a neighborhood plan. But that's the battle of land use in general.
I think overall, it's excellent. I like the 10,000 feet. And I think that you guys have been broad enough where you need to and specific enough where it's appropriate. The one place where I do think there has to be some additional consideration is in just so that there's not a tremendous amount of overlap, and that's the highlight the river, because we have a group that's working on the rivers, a cross-jurisdictional group. We've been working on it for over 7 years. We'll probably be working on it with the same group for at least the next 10, with millions and millions of dollars invested that is partnership money. It's open space money. It's Arapahoe County. It's coming from districts. It's a whole lot of funding that's involved in that, and master planning. And that's the stretch of the river through Arapahoe County. And it includes, part of the planning is also including other jurisdictions. And I think that's one of the things that we've been working really hard with is that corridor with that group. And some of what you've got in here is in keeping with that, but I think there needs to be some sort of recognition that while there is a parallel effort going on, that there's some sort of connectivity between Littleton's comprehensive plan for the river and this parallel effort, which we are also participating in, but it's certainly bigger than just us. And primarily because it's the funding, huh?
Is there anything we can get on that? Information on that? Find out what you're doing?
Yeah, I got everything. I mean, I'm on the committee. I'm happy to give you whatever you need. We talked about that. And I've talked to Glenn about having someone from the planning board who would be interested in attending the meetings just as an audience member. You can't be on the committee, but if you wanted to attend, if time is an issue with that, we can get the minutes and, that information. But that's a incredibly dynamic group that's moving forward, because we've got the money, we've got the money, and we've got the elected power on there to keep things going, so things aren't getting snagged along the way like they often do with some of the stuff. So, yeah, we can figure out, Randy and I will figure out a way to get you guys all up to snuff on what's going on with that.
Anything else?
Anything else?
Oh, you guys said all you want to say?
Yeah. Broadway corridor. That is a separate corridor?
And the
Just right in the
table of contents.
The beginning C corridor plans, you have south.
Yeah, I think under C, we're going to need to identify what is coming.
Future ones.
You got the picture in front of you that tells you what the corridor is.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull this out again, because the idea is, again, the core is really unchanged, not being touched. That's the heart of our city. And it's the corridors around that the comprehensive plan really talks about. But it talks about the core also, but it goes in line with this, what you've already done, so.
Yeah, it's great.
Can I bring up a
Awesome.
point? Can I bring up a point about the corridor studies? Because the explanation that was given to me, this group, not satisfactory to me. We have a Littleton Boulevard corridor study that was ratified by a council. It's either approved or not approved. It should be in the corridor plans listed in our comprehensive plan. In 1 week, the city is hanging their hat on the Littleton Boulevard corridor study. We're going to be looking at a case next week that involves this corridor study. So is it approved or not?
It was, when I looked at the minutes, the council chose not to make it part of the comprehensive plan, but adopted it as design guidelines. So
it is a legal document that can be used in this particular case next week. Don't
just read your staff report. That's what we did.
What year was
You
it
are
adopted?
shaking your head no, isn't it?
I thought design guidelines were different from the corridors. I thought they were two separate things.
There's, actually, when you read the minutes, there was a lot of discussion with the council whether it actually gets incorporated in the comprehensive plan. And the council felt that no, it wasn't, but it does give direction on future development in the area. So in my mind, you set your land uses with your comprehensive plan. When you get to a little bit more detail, you use your design guidelines to evaluate the project. But I don't know what you mean about the corridor being different than the design guidelines. It reads as one document to me, but I wasn't here.
Design guidelines just related to the way things looked, but I thought there was a corridor plan that separate from that. There isn't?
I don't know how you're differentiating the corridor from the design guidelines.
Design is like the buildings have to be painted pink.
Yeah,
And
doesn't say that, but yeah, I know, I hear you.
but I thought there was a plan of some sort for what can be built, not the color.
It actually picked out specific properties as, what was the term used? Transformative projects or something? Catalyst projects, right, right.
But that's in the design guidelines?
Whatever you want to call them. It's, the title of it says, Dennis, you don't remember what it was called. It's design guidelines, and it actually says sheriff's property and a few others.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually on our website. It's where all those download.
Here it is, Peggy. It says Littleton Boulevard corridor study, and then specifically says design guidelines for the sheriff's department site and the community center site. So it's, yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay,
I had another.
go ahead, Scott.
So, just as a general, is there anything that's missing? Like, for example, I talk to realtors around town, and everyone says we have a housing stock issue. If you go to Dr. Cog, they're talking about the boomer bond or issues and aging populations. Another thing that comes to my mind is like resources, whether it's energy, food. Is there any topics that you think are missing from this comp plan?
Can I come in, because tomorrow night I'm going to say this also here. I think we should have a sustainability plan and an economic development.
Okay, yeah. You've, okay, it's expired. You can't talk anymore. They're timed.
Well, we're going to be talking tomorrow night about economic plan, and it mentions, I think, sustainability, whatever. But I think we should have a sustainability plan and an economic plan that are parts of the comp plan. That when I went to one of the, I think it was a CML or Dr. Cog function about a month ago, several cities that were there said that theirs are part of their comprehensive plan, just a subsection. So I think we might consider integrating all of that, so you don't bounce around here and there. So.
I'll let the planning decide what they want to do with that. Quite honestly, sustainability is starting to become wallpaper word to me. Cities don't operate anymore without having some sort of level of concern for that. And I think we can include it in here where necessary, but it's really standard. It's become standard procedure for developers and builders and that type of thing. I don't know that it has to be a special section. I think that,
Well, the people that spoke at the session that I attended, and I think there were 3 different cities that spoke, that made presentations. They had incredible sustainability plans. But that's neither here nor there, so.
Well, and I will say that as a city, we do for our buildings and that type of stuff. But I think it comes down to also making a call as to whether or not you want to start putting things into plans that would require things that may be more up to personal property decisions. So, I'm not going to require everybody put in specific kind of sustainable water heaters type of thing.
No, it's not that. It's not that.
And Scott, I would answer your question probably in terms of, I'm not sure in some instances this puts it into here, as there may be extensions that go into the code at some point in time that deal with, okay, how do you deal with some of the specifics on redevelopment and reinvestment? Do you look at wider doorways as an example that might be there? How do you consider or not within this framework accessory dwelling units as an example that, at least where I've seen it, preserves the character of a neighborhood but has a higher level of density that allows for some social sustainability. So you have words in here that I would say, I think it covers that depending on how far you want to go. At least my read of this was not restrictive, but allows for thoughtful development with the guiding principle of values, character. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think for the most part, sometimes I like a little bit more detail sometimes than making it too 30,000 footish. So sometimes I like to give examples of saying, like, for example, or not saying you have to do this, but just as examples sometimes. Or
well, when you get to the details within the neighborhood plans, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Well, and that leads Phil to something that one of the goals of what we're trying to clean up is we're going in so many. There is no shortage of plans. There's a Denver plan, a Santa Fe plan, an economic development plan, a South Platte River plan. There's plans. And we wanted something that was comprehensive enough that was going to incorporate all of them.
Yeah.
So in terms of I would hope that if I was a developer coming into Littleton 5 months to 5 years from now, that I had enough guidance that I knew where I was going, but I had enough freedom to do what I wanted to do and be creative. And I think all of that structure presently does exist, and we have an ability to fine-tune that here.
Yep.
I want to thank everybody. Good comments.
So one thing for readability, because what we were doing is, such and such bullet 4, about halfway through it shifts from like subcategories A, B, C to bullets, and that happens, I think, because C had only a single bullet after each of the 3 items, and so D and after that, you've got bullets rather than an A, B, C. So it would make it much easier for reference when people are discussing it. Yeah.
Okay. You hear that, Dennis? From here, we're going to incorporate all the comments. We're going to have a some more board study sessions. We hope to have a final draft July 1, and then we hope to have a public hearing in July sometime to try to be done by August. So
Ambitious,
Great.
but good.
it is
Good,
ambitious.
Get done.
but
You'll do it. We have faith in you.
we'll-
That's right. Go, Randy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Did you find yours? Yeah, I can still send you a